This watercolor galaxy landscape is super easy and absolutely magical. Today I am painting this watercolor galaxy landscape, and it is so fun, so easy, and it's one of my most requested tutorials. I am using this very inexpensive set of Prang watercolors. You'll need a couple of round paintbrushes or whatever you have on hand, and to create your stars, you will need some sort of liquid, tempera, or acrylic paint. If you have white in your watercolors, like maybe you have one of the tube sets, you can use that as well. You will also need some masking tape if you want to tape your edges like I did, so that you have a nice, clean, crisp edge. This is the perfect artwork to try at home or in the classroom because it's really simple, it's inexpensive, and it's just mesmerizing to create. If you love art, don't forget to subscribe. I upload at least one full art tutorial every single week. Because a diamond is a perfect geometric shape, I'm using my ruler to measure the midpoint on all four sides of my really small piece of paper. You can do this any size, and you can also tape it off any shape that you would like. A triangle, you could take up your whole page. I think a circle would be cool. I'm just not sure you would use masking tape to get those perfect edges. And when you apply the masking tape, if you're doing a diamond like me, you just connect each point to each other, pressing down so that your water and paint does not spill or bleed into the areas that you don't want it to go in. If that happens, and it's happened to me plenty of times before, you could just cut out the shape of the triangle and glue it or frame it down with a white background. That's an option, but it's so much more satisfying to let the masking tape really create that clean, crisp, diagonal line. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I'm using my inexpensive class set of Prang watercolors. The first step is to add a layer of water covering your entire surface. This will allow the dabs of watercolor to spread and flow like tie-dye in your section of water. You don't want it to be a pool of water, but you want it enough for the watercolors to swim together. I'm keeping my color scheme simple: magenta, blue, and purple. You can decide to have a dominant color, or you can use them all equally, making sure to go all the way to the edges of your diamond shape or whatever shape you've created. I forgot to mention how important paper is with this work of art. If you're using cheap paper that's not meant for watercolor, it is not going to hold all of the paint and water that you are applying in layers. You don't need expensive watercolor paper, you just need a surface that's designed to hold that much water. A paper towel is a great way to absorb any unwanted water, to layer color or put color in areas that maybe you got too dominant with some other color. Now that you have a swirling range of color, it's time to add black. And black is obviously going to be your most dominant color. With your paintbrush, dab black in areas and use water to let it swirl and flow. Because it's going to be so dominant, it's important to go back and layer again with other colors that you've used before. That's why it's important to use thicker paper so that you don't overload your paper with your water. You're the artist, which means you're the boss, so you decide when the galaxy has the effect that you're going for. To make your sky even more dynamic, use a paper towel to pull away color and water to create lighter areas. You can then go back and layer with more color and more water to get the perfect sky that you're going for. Once you're finished layering color, let your watercolor dry. I set mine out in the sun, or you can just come back to it in 20 or 30 minutes. Next, you need white paint, and I'm using really cheap white acrylic paint that I got on sale, and you will need 2 paintbrushes. There are lots of different ways to do a splatter technique, but I'm going for really small stars in the sky, and I'm doing the effect where I use one paintbrush to load paint and the other paintbrush to scrape the paint so it flies across my paper and splatters so it looks like small stars. I have done this technique with my finger, and then I realized I could just use another paintbrush so it's not crazy messy. You can even do this with a toothbrush. This is really satisfying, and it's really hard to mess up. The key is to go all the way to the edge so you don't have a weird halo effect on the edges of your composition. Now it's time to add trees to truly make this a galaxy landscape. Because it's nighttime, I am going to be using just black for my trees. My best advice for this is to keep it simple and to keep your trees small. The real magic of a galaxy landscape is the galaxy sky. So you want it to seem massive. You want it to be like you're in the forest, laying on your back, looking up at the stars, and the larger trees takes away from your sky composition. Another piece of advice for your trees is to stagger the height of them. Some trees would be taller or larger than others, and some would be farther back in space or closer up. This not only makes it more interesting to look at, but it also gives it a really neat, realistic vibe, even though it's so simple. My final step is adding a moon. I'm using the same white paint I used on my stars, and you can make your moon as large as you would like. You could add constellations or shooting stars, but I wanted to keep mine simple. My other advice with the moon is you don't want it smack dab in the middle, but catty corner it somewhere to create more interest in your composition. And now for the most satisfying part of all, slowly removing the tape to create those clean, crisp borders that makes this diamond composition just stand out. All finished, and I think this would look so cool in a frame or sent as a postcard, and it just captures that summertime adventure vibe that I've been feeling. Thanks for sticking around, and if you're interested in more landscape or watercolor tutorials, check these out. I'll also put several links for tutorials in my description box along with all of my materials.